What's up, YouTube? I'm the Vanilla Nerd, and this last week I finished up Season 1 of The Acolyte. Many people are hoping this is the only season. I would like a second season personally, so that's why we're being hopeful. But either way, for clarity, for future proofing of my video title, it is just the first season of The Acolyte, and this is just my review of it and what I thought and what I felt and stuff. So there will be spoilers for the entire show, so if you haven't seen it, get out now. And I guess there will be some spoilers for the prequels and sequels and stuff. So for main Star Wars continuity, but there shouldn't be too many big sequels for shows outside of The Acolyte and for movies outside of the original six. So take that as you will. Let's get into this. Okay, so I know the show has a lot of controversy, and I personally have some issues with it, but I want to start with the good. What did I like about The Acolyte? First and foremost, it's a Jedi-focused story, and I have been wanting a Jedi-centric story for so long, and I just absolutely loved that about The Acolyte. It's focusing on Jedi. Are they the most powerful Jedi in the world? No. They have flaws, they have mistakes, they can't do crazy Force feats, but they still are cool Jedi that do Jedi things, and that's awesome. That's perfect. Secondly, kind of leading into that, is that it's low stakes. Yeah, 10 or 15-ish Jedi end up dying by the end of this show, but that's still relatively low compared to the thousands of Jedi that are in the Order and compared to the quite literally billions, if not trillions, of people living in the galaxy. So I consider it low stakes compared to something like the prequel trilogy, in which the main Sith evil bad guy was trying to take over the entire galaxy, which he succeeded at, so, kudos to him. But still, point is, it's a low stakes story, and I loved that. It kind of felt maybe not similar to The Mandalorian in that way, but I liked that, like Mandalorian season 1, one of the things that made it great was the fact that it wasn't big stakes. It wasn't some big galaxy-wide threat. It was literally just, I want to save this child. And I loved that about Mandalorian season 1. Similar thing here. It's not galaxy-ending threat. It's just a personal connection with these two twins and stuff. And how they executed that, well, could have been better, but we'll get into that in a second. Some other good things. I loved the twins. I really liked May and Osha as characters. I really liked the fact that May started out very much more dark side, very much more revenge, and then by the end, she kind of had given up on her revenge, and she was more light side minded. And in the similar vein, Osha started out very much more light-sided. She saved that one criminal, and she was trying to be the best she could be, but then she ended very dark side, wanting to train with Qimir, which I know technically that's not his name, and it's probably just a fake name and a given name, but the only other name we have for him is the Stranger, so we're definitely going to keep calling him Qimir because that's much more interesting, and we're going to stick with that. But I really liked that transformation. I really liked how one started out one way and then they both switched, and that was really cool to see kind of how it all worked. Now, that being said, it was not the smoothest transition, and it definitely wasn't executed very well. I definitely think Osha's corruption was very rushed, and I definitely think that they could have taken some time to explain that a little bit better. And I'll get into that a little bit more here in a second, but overall, I liked those story beats. I liked how that worked. The other thing that I will say is I really enjoyed the lightsaber action in these movies. In this show. It was just a lot cleaner. I could tell what was going on a lot more. I know not everyone will agree with me on this, but I liked it. It was fun. And episode 5 of this night of this show is going to be one of my favorite Star Wars pieces of entertainment I've ever got to see. It was just really fun seeing Qimir take down all of these Jedi and be so ruthless and like such a good Sith. Maybe not Sith, and we'll get into whether he's a Sith or not, but such a good dark side user, and I just loved that. Plus, the use of Cortosis was very, very fun, so yeah. But what didn't I like about The Acolyte? Well, my biggest problem with The Acolyte was that the dark side was never explicitly stated to be bad. It was never said to be corruptive, to be evil, to be problematic. They just kind of stayed away from that, which really is sad in a show about the dark side. Absolutely, there should be scenes, there should be sections where the Jedi, staunchly claim they're evil, they use the dark side, they are wrong and stuff, and yet that never really happens, and it's very, very frustrating and stuff. And this leads into a lot of issues, trickles down to a lot of issues that I have with the show later on. For instance, Osha's corruption is very rushed. Now, I will say, to the credit of the show, Osha does call out Qimir and say, hey, you killed my friends. And Qimir says, well, I killed Jedi. And this kind of feeds into her corruption a little bit, where, you get the sense that she feels like the Jedi have been lying to her. She knows Saul is holding something back about the night on Brendok and stuff. And we'll get into that more later. But the point is, that she's distrustful of the Jedi, and she holds a little bit of a grudge against them because she failed the Jedi tests and stuff, and she failed to control her emotions. And the dark side's over here saying, hey, you can use your emotions. We don't care. So I get how it's tempting, but I don't think I think the show was way too subtle if it was trying to do that. They should have been a little bit more overt. And more than that, I think it was still too rushed, Now, I will say, again, to the credit of the show, Osha denied training under Qimir for at multiple points. And it wasn't until the very end when she realized that Saul lied to her that she was like, all right, now I'm going to be evil. Now I'm going to join the dark side. And so I really liked that aspect of the Acolyte, but still I think her corruption was rushed, and I think it could have been handled better. I digress. And we'll get into the funny things that happen in the finale later. Moving on, another thing that is a problem with not calling the dark side out specifically is surrounding the Coven of Witches, because that Coven of Witches was clearly using both the dark side and the light side of the Force. And that is a very, very big problem, because that means, and because if you don't call that out about the Coven, if you don't say, hey, you guys using dark side and that's bad, then that makes the Jedi look horrible in this situation. All you had to do is have a line where the Jedi are like, you guys are using the dark side of the Force. That's not allowed. Like, that corrupts. That's evil. We've seen too many people fall prey to that power, and they, are unstoppable. They are a danger and a menace to society. You guys need to stop. And that's why they're trying to protect the children. But instead, they don't do that. They don't call that out. They don't cause a big stink and a big problem about it. And so it makes the Jedi look horrible. And it's so, so dumb. And in fact, in that infamous scene where Saul kills the main mother witch lady, I forget her name at the moment, in that infamous scene, I am 100% siding with Saul on that, because I'm sorry, the mother lady turned into a dark side mist wraith, and he was right next to her. He doesn't know what she's gonna do. And I think she was slowly turning May into a mist wraith as well. And so he was just trying to protect the two girls, and it was self-defense. Oh my goodness, and I'm so bothered the show tries to make Saul look bad for this, but it just, it bothers me. It bothers me. It bothers me. And I know, in this new age of Star Wars and stuff, there's this growing belief that the dark side and light side should be seen as sort of a yin-yang, where you need both the light and the dark to kind of create that perfect contrast. And while I do like that moral lesson of needing to have balance in all things, I really like George's original outlook on the Force, which is to say that the light side is good. That is the proper way to use the Force. You're supposed to surrender yourself to the Force. You're supposed to let it flow through you and let it guide your actions, rather than the Sith who impose their will on the Force. Or I shouldn't say Sith alone. Anyone who taps into the dark side is imposing their will on the Force. They are cheating to get power quickly. They don't know how to control that power properly. They haven't gone through the work, the training, the effort to really fully control that, and so they're sporadic. They have, they rely on their emotions. They're temperamental. They have all these other problems, which is why the light side is better. And I really like that idea. The idea that the dark side is more of a cancer to the light side rather than being two halves of the same whole. And so I think the show is more leaning towards the yin-yang version of the Force, and I'm leaning more towards the cancer version, cancer of the dark side version of the Force, and that's where I have a fundamental problem with the Acolyte and where I fundamentally disagree with it. Ultimately, stepping back a little bit, at the end of the day, there just are too many opinions on Star Wars, in my opinion. There are so many people that believe that the Jedi should act this way, the Force should work this way, lightsabers should function this way, yada, yada, yada. And it all goes back and forth and forth and back. And at the end of the day, there is no definitive answer because the main creator, George Lucas, unfortunately has no more creative control over the direction of Star Wars, which is just means that we're all left kind of taking what he made in the first 6 movies and the Clone Wars and just branching off from there. And sometimes those branches are branches you're going to disagree with. And that's kind of where I am with the Acolyte and their use of the dark side. Now, to be clear, I still really liked the Acolyte. I really enjoyed this show, but I fundamentally disagree with the way they portrayed the dark side. I think one of the clearest examples is at the end of the show, at the very end, Qimir is comforting Osha. He is consoling her in her struggles, and that's not the dark side. The dark side should definitely be more merciless, more evil, more corruptive and stuff, but it almost showed him being nicer and more friendly than the Jedi ever were, and that is a problem and stuff. Moving on, another issue I had with the show is that it took 1/4 of its runtime, roughly 2 episodes, to have dedicated flashbacks, and that grinds my gears. When you only have 8 episodes, taking a fourth, taking 2 episodes out of that 8-episode runtime to do a flashback, oh man, that's just, I don't know. It feels like poor storytelling to me. And what especially bothers me about these flashback episodes is we don't cut back to the adult versions of these characters, or should I say the more grown-up version, because there were some adults in those. We don't cut back to them and how they're seeing, because that's what creates an interesting flashback, in my opinion, is you get to see, how does this affect this person now? Are they angry at the retelling? Are they saddened at the retelling? Are they frustrated at this particular plot point and stuff? Or what about the reactions of the sisters, when Saul, literally latches May to a table and says, "You're going to listen to my story." What's May's reaction? I want to see. What does she think? Is she angry? Is she frustrated? Is she confused? Does it make sense to her? Does she have understanding? I want to know all of those things, but we don't get that at all, and it's just grr. So I really didn't like that. On top of all that, now that the season's over, we see these flashbacks and stuff. I really question why Master Torben was willing to commit suicide. Like, did he just feel that bad about killing an entire coven of witches? Did he feel that bad about, I guess not killing them, because he wasn't the one who did anything, really. He just was complicit in it? And does he feel bad about covering up the story that much? Like, is that how bad? Because I get feeling bad, but, like, I wouldn't stoop to let me kill myself. I would just be like, it would bottle up inside me, and I'd go to the Jedi High Council and be like, "I confess my sins. I lied to you guys. You don't know the full story of what happened on Brendok." That's what I would do if it really was putting an itch in my ear. And maybe he couldn't face the punishment, but it's like, my dude, you have like the least punishment of anyone there and stuff. Maybe the second least, because I guess the Wookiee guy, Kaunaka, was really the least. He just was there, and then he got controlled by the witches and, fought the Jedi a little bit. And that wasn't even his own action, so he has no responsibility. But still, I don't understand why Master Torben killed himself, so, the flashbacks failed to explain that and stuff. And whatnot. It does explain why May hates the Jedi. Totally valid. She sees her mom get killed by them and stuff. Yes, it was self-defense, but she doesn't understand that. She's a kid. So I'm totally fine with that. Which, actually, on that note, I'm also fine with Osha killing Saul. She sees the dark side. She's been tempted by it. She's been corrupted by it. Qimir is offering this great thing. Hey, you can use those negative emotions. I don't care that you have those negative emotions. He's connecting with her. He's like, hey, I was a failed Jedi Padawan too once. I understand you, and stuff. So he's giving all this good stuff. She's starting to suspect, there's more to this incident on Brendok than I think. Maybe what Saul's been telling me all this time is not the full truth. And the fact of the matter is Saul keeps saying, oh, well, there was a fire and stuff. and all this. So, it all builds up and to this beautiful crescendo. And then when Saul confirms, yes, I killed your mother, that's when she snaps, and she kills him. And then afterwards, she cries. She's remorseful. She's sad. She's like, oh my goodness, I killed this father figure of mine. But it makes sense in the moment because she was in this high stress situation. She finds out that Saul actually killed her mom after defending him in front of May, and she realized she's been lied to for 15 years. Yeah, that totally is valid. Yes, I believe Saul should have defended himself more, and I believe he should have said it was self-defense. She was using the dark side. It would have corrupted you as it's corrupting you now, and all of that stuff. There's absolutely some things he could have and absolutely should have said, but still, I support Osha's decision of force choking him because I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, and I would understand why she gets corrupted. Yes, it may have happened a little too fast, but it works for me, so I still like that aspect, even though I don't like everything else, The last thing I want to say about the flashbacks and the fact that the flashbacks were 2 whole episodes is the fact that, man, oh man, the flashbacks did not make a good mystery. That was so frustrating. I hated how the mystery was the fact that anytime Saul was about to explain, an explosion happened, or someone cut in, or something happened where he couldn't explain any further. And so, literally, there was no mystery. It was just Saul about to explain something, and then, no, he doesn't get a chance to. And then finally, at the end of episode 6, it sounds like Saul is about to explain something, and it's like, no, cut, credits, let's wait to the next episode and have just this entire flashback episode. And I just don't like that. What I would have preferred 10 times more is if they sprinkled in aspects of the flashbacks, or rather, they sprinkled in dialogue about the flashbacks throughout the show. What would it have been like for Saul to tell Osha, hey, I haven't told you everything that happened on Brendok, and there's more to it than just May starting a fire. There was a fight, and then he gets cut off. It's like, wait, there was a fight? What was happened in this fight? Who was fighting? And stuff. Or maybe, Osha asks, wait, you never did tell me how these scars happened. They just happened on the thing. They happened from Master Kaunaka. What? Kaunaka attacked him? How did this all happen? They could have added so many more layers to this with the existing flashback that we have, but they didn't do anything. They just refused to talk about it, and they called that a mystery, and that really bothers me. And lastly, what this all leads me to, and what I've talked about, hinted at a little bit throughout this review, is the fact that the Jedi were still goofs. And, they didn't call it the dark side, and they didn't defend themselves properly, and they died really easily to Qimir, although I kind of liked that. I liked the fact that Qimir was just so cool. And to be fair, both Yord and Jeki made some good attacks, and were good. They were fine. But still, the Jedi were just kind of still goofy. Now, to be fair, this is only 100 years before Episode 1. And in Episode 1, the Jedi are shown to be waning. Their power is weakening. They aren't listening to the Force as much. They're more politically integrated and involved. So I like that we see the early beginnings of that here in this show. So I'm okay with it, but it is kind of sad because this was supposed to be set during the High Republic and be this awesome High Republic story. And instead, it's the Jedi are still being stupid. I really just want a Jedi that is good for the sake of good. I want the Captain America Jedi, and not just that he's good for the sake of good, but that he's powerful, he's competent, he can stop other guys. Yes, maybe he has some flaws, maybe he makes some mistakes, but he defends his actions and he is willing to do that and all that stuff. Unlike Saul, who just said, yes, I killed your mom, and then didn't say anything more about it. Didn't say it was self-defense, didn't say anything else, but here we are. This is the show we've been given. Now, on a more neutral note, let's talk about Qimir. Is he a Sith or is he not? So, the line he says specifically is, a Jedi like you would call me a Sith. But he doesn't necessarily call himself a Sith, nor does he refer to himself as Darth anything, or as a Sith Lord or anything like that. So, I kind of like my headcanon where he's just a dark side user. He was a Jedi. He got ousted from that. Maybe he kept his lightsaber. Maybe he killed someone for a lightsaber. I don't know. I don't care. He corrupted the lightsaber through an act of dark side abilities. He liked the fact that through the dark side, he could still use the power of the Force, And I like that story. I personally absolutely love the idea of a Sith kind of growing up with kind of existing and learning the ways of the dark side all on their own. You know, I love the idea of, well, pretty much Kymir's character. He's a failed Jedi that still wants to use the Force, and so he's willing to go to any means necessary, and so he just embraces the dark side as it slowly corrupts him more and more. Maybe he started out with good ideals of, hey, I want to reform the Jedi, I want to still use the power to do good things, but as he tastes more and more of the dark side, the power keeps corrupting him. He can't get enough power, and he kind of just turns dark. He's not a full Sith Lord. He doesn't know the ins and outs of manipulation, of taking down the Jedi, of, you know, he doesn't have grand goals of taking down the Jedi or ruling the galaxy or anything, but he is still a dark side user. And that's kind of what I hope is still the case. Now, I know the big thing to go against this is the fact that we saw the cameo of Darth Plagueis. And I thought that was kind of cool. I like Darth Plagueis. And the fact that he was hiding in the shadows and looking on at them makes me hope, just hope, that he himself is also looking for an acolyte. And so he sees this young Sith, he sees this young dark side user who just gained an apprentice, who's clearly powerful with the Force. And he's like, I'm going to recruit them now to be my acolyte. I think that would work really good. I don't know if that's what the intention of the show is, and I really hope that is where they go, but I think more likely, and unfortunately, it is going to be confirmed that Qimir is a Sith, or maybe he doesn't know it yet, but he's being trained to be a Sith by Darth Plagueis, and he just thinks Plagueis is teaching him some cool stuff, but he doesn't care. And so Plagueis, but Plagueis is his actual master, and Qimir and Plagueis have a history, and that's just going to bother me because I wanted this to be low stakes. I wanted this to stay away from the Sith, but clearly they're trying to connect it even more. And, you know, that's fine. The show's got to do what the show's got to do. Star Wars is nothing if not super interconnected, but I personally would prefer a story where it is a dark side user, not a Sith. And that would make the whole controversy of Ki-Adi-Mundi being like, the Sith haven't been heard from for over 1,000 years, make more sense, because this is not a Sith. This guy is not trying to rule the galaxy. He's not trying to kill all Jedi. He's just trying to use the dark side because he likes power, he likes the Force, and this is the only way he can get it. Finishing up, let's talk about the finale, and let's talk about the controversy of Master Vernestra's decision to hide the truth from the Senate and from the Chancellor, which is an interesting choice, to say the least. I think one of the biggest things is the lapse in logic of how she could actually keep that covered up, because wouldn't other Jedi be good and want to bring up the truth to the Senate? But I guess not. Wouldn't there be independent investigators who would be able to say, no, there's more to the story than that? And I don't know. I just don't think it's conceivable that she could actually keep this covered up, but maybe she does. And then there's the implications that since she's bringing in Master Yoda to help, that she's letting Yoda in on the controversy, on the cover-up, and Yoda is now going to also be complicit in hiding this from the Senate, which... it's a little questionable. I know Yoda has pandered to the Senate in the past, or I shouldn't say the past, not up to this point, but he has pandered to the Senate in previous Star Wars projects. Notably, he condoned the action of exiling Padawan Tano so that the Jedi wouldn't look as bad, But that was the height of the Clone Wars, and there were some extenuating circumstances and stuff. But still, that is another questionable thing. So maybe he does take part in the cover-up, but that gets me a little bit of a bad feeling in my stomach that he would condone such a thing and stuff. So yeah, that's interesting. Also, another thing that kind of bothered me about the finale was the fact that Qimir didn't use cortosis again. He still wore his cool cortosis helmet, and presumably he still had a handguard or something like that. I don't remember. Actually, he might not have had that, but doesn't matter. He still had his helmet, so why wasn't he using that to stop Saul's blade? He used that to great effect in Episode 5 Night, but now all of a sudden, different fight scene, different choreography, we aren't going to use cortosis now. It's no, that gave you a clear, distinct advantage over the Jedi. Why aren't you using that? At least in this one, he still used his, second saber. That was pretty cool, but whatevs. Here we are again, I guess. I don't know. The other thing with the finale is I really didn't understand why May's memory needed to be wiped. It made no sense. and I'm still just confused. I guess May wanted to tell the Jedi what actually happened, but she couldn't do that because then Kymir's identity would be given away, and then Qimir was nice and like, well, I won't kill you, but I will wipe your memory so you can't rat on me. But then she's gonna rat on him anyway because the Jedi are like, yo, you're gonna help us find your sister and stuff. So, oh man, it's just so many levels of confusing in the finale. Like the show, I still really like the Acolyte, and I'll still probably rewatch it and enjoy it and stuff. And like I've said a couple times, Episode 5 Night is one of my favorite Star Wars episodes, or clips and sequences I've ever seen. I really liked that episode, and I really liked the Acolyte, but I really think it just tripped at the finish line for me, where the finale just it tried to do a lot of things, but it just failed on so many accounts, and I really didn't like that. I don't know. I just didn't enjoy it as much. And I think it really hurt the show in general and overall. So, yeah, I guess in conclusion, what I'll say for The Acolyte was there were some good things about it. It was executed poorly, and it was a fun time. So I enjoyed it, but it definitely just fell prey to a lot of the problems that Star Wars has been struggling with, which is they have great ideas like an Obi-Wan show or a Boba Fett show, but then they execute it and it's absolutely trash and it's just not as enjoyable as it was. Sure, there's some fun sequences in all of these shows, but they're just fun. They're just that. They're fun sequences. They aren't a good show overall. Now, personally, I still think The Acolyte's better than the Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, but it's not better by a lot. Let's put it that way. So here we are. And that's my review of The Acolyte Season 1.